morning. Another day with Dr. Johnson. So, conversations with Dr. Johnson. Today is Wednesday. Dr. Johnson, we're not going to talk about the election because if not, then you're going to have to prescribe some hormone treatments.
Or prescribe you a tranquilizer.
A tranquilizer. Why? Because I'm so excited.
Because you're so anxious.
Oh, right. Okay. So, conversations with Dr. Johnson. Yesterday we talked about sleep. And in that conversation, I was asking Dr. Johnson, were we created to sleep or to be awake? And Dr. Johnson was kind of confused. So I wanted him to explain to us today, why are we awake?
No, I don't think I was confused. I said both are very important.
Okay.
Why are we awake? So we can do whatever it is we're supposed to do on a given day.
Supposed to do? Now we're going deeply philosophical. What are we supposed to do?
Well, every person has to figure that out for themselves. What is their mission? What is their dharma?
I am kind of lost now. That sounds really Republican coming from you because liberals think the state should tell them what to do.
Well, that's their problem.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, you were talking about the things that they're supposed to do. They need to find themselves. So let's explore some of the things. So one of the things I find interesting is that I don't use an alarm, but I just wake up. So
Okay.
what wakes me up?
Well, you have programmed your brain to have a built-in alarm clock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how do I know I'm waking up? Because sometimes I just wake up and I know, oh, wow, I'm awake. There is this consciousness of now saying, first of all, I didn't know I was asleep, but I didn't know I'm awake, right?
We're getting a little esoteric here, aren't we?
It's okay.
If you don't know if you're awake or asleep, you're probably in the alpha state, a state of deep relaxation. It's kind of a twilight, halfway between awake and asleep.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So what are the things that drive wakefulness, right? Because some people, when they wake up with alarms or whatever, they need coffee to wake up. Why? Some people need coffee, some people don't know. What's the difference?
Well, when an alarm clock wakes you up, the alarm clock has no consideration for what stage of sleep you're in. If it wakes you up during REM sleep, then odds are you're going to feel more awake and refreshed, and you're probably going to remember the dreams that you were having. Okay? If it wakes you up during deep sleep, that's a little bit traumatic to the body, and then you're more likely to feel kind of groggy and like you're not really quite ready for your day.
Okay. And typically, is it because people go to bed late? Or because I go to bed at 8:30, and so I'm awake around 4:35 a.m., fully awake.
So you're one of those guys.
Yes, I am. Well, I trained myself.
Yeah.
Because I like being, first of all, I used to be not a morning person.
Yeah.
But life happens in the morning.
Yes, it
so
does.
I had to train myself to become a morning person.
Yes.
Right. And so that meant going to bed early. Isn't that the advice?
Well, sure. If you're going to get up early, you've got to go to bed early. Otherwise, you won't have gotten enough sleep.
If not, you set that alarm, and then when it triggers, and then you wake up, you're groggy and you're irritated already in the morning, which is not a good thing.
Yeah. Now, another part of the answer to your question, what wakes us up, your adrenal glands, the body's stress glands, are programmed to put out maximum cortisol levels first thing in the morning, and that helps to wake us up and helps us to have energy and be ready for our day.
So you could almost call that, it's like, what do you do when you a car is stalling and you have to use another battery to like jolt it back? So is that what the adrenal is doing? Is like it shocks our system back to life from that deep sleep?
No,
it's not doing that.
No. What you're talking about is a surge of adrenaline.
Okay.
Now that also comes from the adrenals, but we are not supposed to have a surge of adrenaline in the morning because that's a more shocking fight or flight response.
Okay.
Get us ready to run for our lives or fight for our lives.
Yes.
Doesn't caffeine give you that surge, that jolt?
Sure, that's an artificial way of doing that. And caffeine in moderation is actually good for most of us to a certain extent. There are certain people with certain heart problems that maybe need to stay away from caffeine, but caffeine helps our brain to be sharper, helps us to learn things, memorize things, and be more on top of our activities.
Except if you were like me, born naturally gifted with a brain that is optimized for performance.
Here's Charles's halo right here. Do you see it?
So you were talking about adrenaline, but there's something else, another hormone that is in that wake-up process. So what's that called?
Cortisol.
Yeah, so talk to us about cortisol.
Okay.
Why is that, first of all, the identification of it and the tracking of it, why is that really important? And what are the real issues around cortisol itself?
Okay, so the adrenals are the body's stress hormones, or stress glands rather, and in a very real sense, they're a critically important part of the foundation upon which the rest of our health stands. Producing cortisol is one of the very important jobs of the adrenals, and so when people talk about, oh, my doctor gave me a shot of prednisone,
Yeah.
well, cortisol is the bioidentical version of that.
Yeah.
And like most everything else in life, we need the right amount of cortisol. We don't want too much, we don't want too little. When we're first stressed out, our cortisol levels go up to help us deal with that stress.
Yeah.
But if that stress is chronic and goes on for a time, then our adrenals become burnt out and then they can't produce enough cortisol. Now, if you have zero cortisol in your body, you will not survive. Very few people know this, but President John F. Kennedy had adrenals that didn't function at all. And they had to give him cortisol every day of his life.
Wow.
To keep him alive and so that he could function. Okay?
Wow.
So cortisol is very much a two-edged sword. We need just enough of it, but not too much. And if our adrenals can't calm down in the evening, if our cortisol levels stay high in the evening, that's going to keep us awake.
Yeah.
Because that's one of cortisol's jobs, is to keep us awake. So certain people that complain of insomnia, it's because their cortisols are staying in overdrive.
Right, yeah.
And they're not going, allowing that cortisol level to fall overnight as it should.
So is it like a cortisol metabolism? A lot is produced and then the body metabolizes that during the day and excretes it, so it reduces the amount in the body. Is that how that works?
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
The main part of it is just how much cortisol the
It's-
adrenals are producing at any given time.
Oh, wonderful. So, okay, so now we have this whole concept also of the circadian circle, right? Where
Yes.
we have the pineal gland, you
Yes.
spoke about it yesterday, and it takes light and food signals
Yes.
to drive the overall clock.
Yes.
The body clock.
Yep.
So that body clock, talk to us how that body clock works when you're awake and when you're asleep, and how that whole clock itself works.
I wish I had a good answer for you.
Yeah.
You know, as smart as we like to think we are, there's still many things about the human body that we haven't completely figured out. And I'm not aware that anybody has completely figured out that internal body clock circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
We certainly know that exposure to light and exposure to dark is a key driver of this.
Yes.
But beyond that, I don't think we have a precise explanation
For it.
Yeah.
And that's why people who do work at night or people who live in Alaska and have different light and dark exposure develop certain chronic illnesses because of that, right?
Sure. People who have to work all night, they have much higher likelihood of developing any number of chronic illnesses.
Because of that imbalance.
Well, because they're not sleeping when they're supposed to be sleeping. They're awake when they're
Yes.
supposed to be sleeping.
Okay.
When I worked in the trauma center and had to do a night shift, it always took a significant toll.
Okay.
It took a few days to recover from that.
So there are a couple of things about how we then preserve our energy level throughout the day, right? The importance of trying to manage that energy appropriately. So what is the best times to eat during the 16 hours that we're awake? And what is the best way to have that food and have optimal metabolism for the food?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish on any given day. There's something called intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Every night while we're sleeping, we are fasting.
Yeah.
And that's why the first meal of the day is called break fast. We're
Yes.
breaking our fast, so breakfast.
Do you eat breakfast?
I usually do, but not when I'm intermittent fasting.
Okay,
So-
because I don't eat breakfast
Yeah.
generally as
Yeah.
a rule.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, there are sometimes you eat breakfast and sometimes you don't?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. So intermittent fasting basically means that you are taking a certain hours of the day where you're not eating.
Yeah.
And so if you're fasting overnight and then you skip breakfast and then your first meal of the day is lunch, now you have extended that normal overnight fasting time. And intermittent fasting has all sorts of benefits, okay? It helps people to lose weight. It helps in people who have diabetes or pre-diabetes, it helps to restore something called insulin sensitivity, okay? Which is a very good thing, a very important thing. We all want to be as insulin sensitive as we possibly can, okay? Lack of insulin sensitivity is the driving factor behind type 2 diabetes, the adult onset diabetes.
Yeah.
Now, during fasting, our bodies can detoxify, and very importantly, they can undergo a process called autophagy.
Autophagy, big word, autophagy. Talk to us about that.
Okay, so we all know that the cells in our body have turnover, okay?
Yes.
In fact,
They live a certain amount of time, they die, and they form debris.
yeah, at my age, I don't have any of the cells that were in my body when I was born or even when I was 30 or 40 because they've all been recycled, okay? As we age, we don't recycle as efficiently, and there are cells that become senescent or senile, which means they can't function properly anymore, okay? But they're kind of dead weight. They put a drag on our metabolism.
I thought those were liberals. Those are not liberal cells, senescent cells.
You can draw your own conclusions on that. Okay, so autophagy is the process by which our body gets rid of these senile cells, these dead weight cells. But as we age, we get less efficient at that process. Fasting boosts our autophagy efficiency quite
Clean out those
significantly.
cells, yes.
And in fact, if someone with a severe chronic illness will fast for 3 days, and during this fast, I typically recommend that they use freshly squeezed organic carrot juice, okay?
Okay.
So it's not a total fast, it's a carrot juice fast.
Yes.
On a total fast, you only drink water.
Yes.
This is a carrot juice fast, and I have seen miraculous results with this. People with rheumatoid arthritis, after their 3-day carrot juice fast, they feel like they're completely normal, like their arthritis is gone.
Wow. Wow. You hear that, folks? Folks who have senescent, who are supposed to become useless, you could do a 3-day juice fast, carrot juice, organic.
And freshly squeezed, not
Freshly
bought
squeezed.
at the
So the-
supermarket.
So they could grate the carrot, right?
Well, you have to have a juicer.
Yeah, a juicer,
Yeah,
right?
if you
And-
do it by hand, it takes forever.
Well, I'm an African. That's how we use our time. Here you use a juicer and then you're bored. In Africa, we actually grate it because it's a good use of time. Right. Here you use a juicer, then they say I'm bored because the juicer did it too quickly. Right.
I don't think so.
And so with intermittent fasting also, there's something that is emerging called functional foods.
Yes.
Give us some sense of what functional foods are and how you use them in therapy and how useful they are.
Okay. So the food we eat has a huge impact on how our body functions,
Yes.
okay? Now, the big problem with the standard American diet, one of the big problems, there are several, but one of the problems is we eat too much sugar and too much starch. Starch gets virtually instantly converted into sugar in the human body. So it's basically the equivalent of consuming sugar, okay? Now, all carbohydrates including fruits and vegetables, can be converted into sugar during the digestion process. However, whole foods, and I'm not talking about the store, I'm talking about a food that has not been processed.
Yes, not Whole Foods. Yes, Amazon Whole Foods now.
Yeah.
Real food, whole.
Yeah, so real whole food contains
Like a potato.
contains fiber.
Yes.
Okay, fiber slows down the sugar absorption, slows down the digestion process that converts that starch into sugar, and so we should ideally never be buying food that comes in a package.
Yes.
Why? Because most of modern food processing is about removing the fiber. Why would they do that? Because that's what Americans want.
Yes.
Fiber forces us to chew and chew and chew and chew and chew before it's ready to be swallowed.
Yeah.
And most Americans are lazy. We're in a hurry. We want to eat fast.
That's why in that
Hence
movie,
fast food.
in that movie, they were giving everybody a feeding bottle. Is
Oh,
that what
yeah.
Americans want? They just want to suck milk all day.
What movie is that?
Wally.
Wally, the Disney movie.
Oh, yes, I
All
remember
the
that.
people
Yeah.
were just sucking feeding bottles.
Yes, with no fiber.
No fiber,
And that's-
and they were waddling. They were all fat boys.
They were this
They were
big.
all
Well, they
fat.
couldn't even waddle.
Yeah, they were like penguins.
They were on these little hoverboard
Yeah.
type things. That's the only way they could get around.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the future of America.
Let's hope not.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's hope.
Well, I want if the liberals are in charge, we know.
Oh my
We may
goodness.
end up being a nation of Wallies.
Okay,
Anyways.
so functional food,
Yeah.
to get back to your question.
Hilarious.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you. Go ahead.
So functional food is a prepared, processed product
Yeah.
that, number one, has lots of fiber in it, number two, has very little sugar and starch in it. And what it does is it steers our metabolism into fat burning mode,
Exactly.
as opposed to fat storage mode.
Yeah.
The standard American diet basically forces us to go into fat storage mode.
Okay.
And that's why we're seeing such an epidemic of obesity, prediabetes, and diabetes in this country.
Yeah, so even though carbohydrates are considered to be eaten at a minimum, there is this whole emerging idea about resistant starches.
Yes.
Right. So talk to us about resistant starches and why they're much better carbohydrates to include in your diet.
Okay, so resistant starch simply means the starch is resistant to being broken down into sugar. Okay, so if you eat a green banana,
Yes.
which to me doesn't taste good, but if you
In
eat it,
Africa, we eat them and we fry them. It's called tostones or plantanos.
easy for you to say.
Yes. And that's a beautiful Hispanic food. In Latin America and in Africa, we
Yeah.
eat a lot of unripe green bananas and plantains.
Yeah, so if you were to eat a green banana, it would not have the same effect on spiking your blood sugar.
Like a ripe banana.
Yes, exactly.
It's very important we understand that, guys. Resistant starches.
Now, if you eat a raw potato,
Yeah.
that's also a resistant starch.
Yes.
Okay, some fairly new information that I'm rather excited about. If you take a baked potato or a boiled potato, however you happen to prepare it, or if you take white rice that's just been cooked and you refrigerate them overnight, the cooling process somehow converts the starches into resistant starch.
This is cooked rice, boiled rice.
Yes,
And you keep it in the fridge, not
Yeah.
freezer, just the fridge.
just the fridge.
And then the next day you
Reheat it and
heat
eat
it and eat it.
And
Now
that-
it's resistant.
Now it's resistant starch.
Wow, that's how I was gonna start it because I mean, my daughter and Mike here, they love noodles and rice.
Yes.
So this is your escape.
Yes.
Now you can have a way to eat rice and not be guilty. Because every time you've been eating rice, Mike, you are looking, is Charles watching me? He's a guilty guy. Because he now eats it in the kitchen, or sometimes he takes it to the bathroom.
I'm weak.
To eat it in private so we don't watch him. Same thing with Karen. Sneaks it into the bathroom and eat a few pieces quickly before she steps out.
You know, that sounds like too much information.
All right, so resistant starches. Yeah, do we have some questions
Yes,
before we close?
a couple questions, really quick. So you said raw potato, as in actually uncooked, is
Yes.
you can eat some, you
Yeah,
can eat
whether
it?
it's
Yes.
a raw sweet potato or raw Irish potato.
Yes. Also, they can be eaten raw. Okay, and then
Yeah, because in Africa we eat the raw sweet potato.
okay,
Yes, or we roast it or boil it, but we also eat it raw.
and then we also had a question earlier in regards to, is there such a thing as sleeping too much?
Is there such a thing as sleeping too much? Yes, of course, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a liberal illness.
I cannot.
Charles, one would almost think that this is the day after Election Day. And now I've lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Is there
Sleeping too
there's
much.
Oh,
such a
sleeping
thing
too
as
much.
sleeping too much.
Yes, okay. So the human body was made to move around and be active. And in consideration of that, there's a new saying, sitting is the new smoking. People who sit around at a desk all day and don't move around, they're not active, they're harming their health. So if you're spending too much time in bed, which sometimes people do if they're depressed, yeah, that's not a good thing because that interferes with our body being active.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
And one more question, I'm so sorry, it just came in. Someone asked, so what's good for high blood pressure? In regards to your, what you were saying before going back to sleep and foods, like lowering, so I guess the question is more related to, is resistant starches good for high blood pressure?
Okay. Well, sure, resistant starch is good for just about anything that ails you if you are using that resistant starch to replace the standard starch. If you're just eating that on top of all the regular starch that you normally eat, that may not have much benefit. So for high blood pressure, well, the simple mineral magnesium, you can think of that as nature's blood pressure pill.
Yeah,
and so that can be helpful, although a lot of people have bigger underlying health issues, hardening of the arteries, that magnesium is not going to magically reverse. A lot of people have a nitric oxide deficiency. Both magnesium and nitric oxide, if we're looking down the opening of a blood vessel, an artery, this is your artery without magnesium and nitric oxide. This is your artery with magnesium and nitric oxide. So you get better blood flow here, and as an artery opens up and relaxes, that lowers your blood pressure. Now, a lot of people are going to need more than that. They may need chelation therapy to reverse their hardening of the arteries. They may have a vitamin B6 deficiency, which can, in some people, contribute to high blood pressure. So there's not one single, simple, one-size-fits-all answer to this, because high blood pressure can be a very complicated issue.
Yes, and we have lots of interventions here with regard to chelation, as you just said, with regard to plaque X, vasodilation with regard to nitric oxide, and also magnesium. So, but we require normally a very important diagnostics to really understand what's going on.
Yes, exactly.
So that we can intervene appropriately.
Exactly.
So we are not here giving advice. If you need specific advice, you need to then consult with Dr. Johnson.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Another
My pleasure.
wonderful day.
My pleasure.
After the elections, thank you for entertaining my jokes on those other people. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and we'll see you tomorrow when we return with conversations with Dr. Johnson. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.